Yo yo yo, what is going on? Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to show you my Greatsword Orb, aka JUSTICAR build. I have returned to the game to try out Hyper Boost, and I can say in a quick review that Hyper Boost is what the game should have been on launch, and if it was that way, we'd probably still be at 300,000 players. But that being said, Hyper Boost is really fun. The gear progression is very solid. It's getting us close to being on track with people that have been playing since launch. But anyway, playing Graceful Orb in PvE is insanely fun. My solo capability of doing like the public dungeons, the open world dungeons, I can solo rooms packs without ever stopping for resources or for healing. Soloing 20 groups of mobs. Also, my bossing is it's decent. It's not amazing. It's not the best PvE class, but it is decent and it's very fun and has a lot of survivability. So I pretty much never die. So yeah, that being said, let's go ahead and hop into the build or whatever. Unhid my UI. All right, so the first thing I want to go over for this build is the stats. So um, for PVE, I'm running 60 strength, 67 dex, 65 wisdom. I would go higher into wisdom if I wasn't at the 2 stat cap. After that, it's not really worth it to go into a stat any further. Basically, I put 30 points. After you go past 30, it's just not worth it. But wisdom is the most important stat. Is basically what I'm trying to say. Dexterity is also extremely important, and strength is also really important. The heavy attack and the max damage from strength, the crit and the damage from dex, the max damage and the mana and the cooldown are all very important for wisdom. Um, the armor set that I went with is based off of the heavy attack. The overall stats for the gear is not bad, but I am getting, like I said, a decent amount of heavy attack as well as attack speed, which is really important. The attack speed is important for um, overall fluidity of this build because you have a lot of buttons to press and you have like very short windows for your burst combo. So the attack speed helps a lot. Yeah, these are the current weapons that I'm using because like, and this is the current build that I'm using because of what it was provided to me. I would say that if I was building this character, ideally it would be pure heavy attack and HP and crit. I would say hit and heavy attack also extremely important, but mostly heavy attack. Like my goal is to make this a heavy attack glass cannon build, and then have another gear set that's pure HP for certain situational fights when I don't need to do as much damage. But for now, this is what it's gonna be. You can kind of take a look at my stats in the description. I will have like a more ideal build that I'm going towards at some point with like heroic orb or heroic greatsword. Just make sure you check the Questlog in the description. I'll make sure I put the skill build, but the gear will match what I would go for if I wasn't on Hyper Boost. This is just um, Hyper Boost gear. It's decent, but it's not the best. Yeah, but you can see here my hit, my heavy attack, my skill damage boost. Heavy attack being at 560 melee, magic 530, 529, whatever. 340 skill damage boost, pretty good, and 23 bonus damage. Crit damage, heavy attack damage is at 110%. My crit damage is at 9%. My buff duration is at 23%. Buff duration is actually really important on this class too because you have some amazing buffs. My cost efficiency is okay. My HP, 27k HP is like insane actually, by the way. Um, all right, so that is my gear and my stats. So let me show you the actual skill build. Alright, so I'm just gonna go over my skills for PvE here and kind of also discuss the build theory. So as you'll see here, um, I am I am using amplification as the main buff for this build. Amplification Veil is going to give me health, shield, and increase my base damage. This is very important for this build. Without this skill, like the build would do very minimal damage compared to what it does. So that boosts my base damage. Da Vinci's Courage is going to boost my attack speed. The attack speed of party members, I should specify, insanely good buff. But yeah, Star Calling, Stellar Dash, really good DPS skills. Your Void Slash is also an insanely good DPS skill, giving 840% base damage. And then Interstellar Explosion is very good when spec'd properly, like with the correct skill specializations. However, we don't have an insane amount of points, so I haven't really been using all of the modifiers on the skill. However, I would um, recommend using Orb Explosion Radius, um, at least Orb Explosion Radius, because that's going to give you like an immense amount more damage over time. All right, and then we have Star Destroyer, which it's not amazing DPS unless it's charged. When it's charged, it doesn't like massive amount more damage, especially with the weaken. However, for your charge skills, it's um, worse than both Death Blow and Guillotine because Death Blow has a 100% damage increase to monsters. However, for fully charging Star Destroyer, it does scale a little harder. Alright, but your main DPS skills for this build are still going to be Guillotine and Death Blow. You do great damage with your Orb skills, however, your main DPS skills are Guillotine and Death Blow. So, um, Supernova Collapse is another very good DPS skill for when it's used. However, the cooldown is the biggest problem with this skill build. I potentially may be able to spec more into cooldown reduction at some point. However, this is like early testing stages of the build. Another thing to keep in mind, I like using Iron Point Parry when I don't have to use Barrier for a DPS race. So if you're gonna block, Barrier is going to give you a lot more damage than Iron Point Parry because of the skill damage boost. However, Iron Point Parry it's just it has a better animation. So I think for most situations it's better to use parry, but when you need extra damage or you want to maximize your damage, barrier is gonna give you more damage. And then for my passives, Rift Fracture is really it's a must for using your orb skills, so it's gonna give you more damage on consecutive hits. The max HP is kind of important because you do scale with HP with this build. Attacking with Orb gives me more magic damage and it stacks 6 times. Apply Stellar Echo. Um, I don't basic attack a lot, but when you do basic attack, it is extra damage. Essentially, what you would put in this build if you didn't want the extra damage from basic attacks, the only other good passives that we have are like defensive, right? Um, so it's you're not really gaining or losing anything with this passive. I'll say that. It's situational depending upon what situation you're gonna be in. But sometimes I will normal attack, not when I'm boss racing. But then we have Raging Frenzy, increased skill damage boosts when there's 3 or more targets. This is insanely good when you're AOE farming. It's like just obvious how good it is. The critical hit chance increase from the orb is insanely important too because you can essentially just stack free critical hit just from using um, certain skills. And then we're gaining resources with Victor's morale. By dealing damage, we're gaining mana, And then here we're restoring mana when my orbs collapse. So passively, I'm gaining mana from doing damage, and when my orbs collapse. So just by playing the game, I'm gaining mana with both of these. Um, I wish I had more like better DPS passives with this build. However, um, the damage, like I said, is it's really solid for what it is. Um, yeah, those are my skills. That is my passives. And then when you look at the skill specializations for PVE, like I said, guillotine, you want everything on guillotine. Frost cleaving is really important. Death blow is really important. I do like the damage increase on death blow. However, we're not using ascending slash, so it's gonna be a little harder to get that off. So I'm not really using it. Da Vinci's courage is really good for like grouping. Like I said, public dungeons. Having that extra heal is really clutch. However, if you were damage racing, obviously you wouldn't need it. Having the movement speed buff and then having amplification veil on your shield without it, it doesn't give you damage. You need amplification veil, and you want to use amplification veil off cooldown, and you want to use it before using your main DPS skills. So typically, I would amplification veil into a guillotine, and that guillotine is going to hurt. Alright, we have the extra reactivate on Void Slash. Is really important because you're going to be star calling into Stellar Dash and then star calling into Void Slash as like your main filler combos outside of using Guillotine and Death Blow. You're going to be using your orb skills, and like I said, it's going to be star calling, Stellar Dash, Void Slash main. The pierce damage on Stellar Dash is really good. The damage boost and the additional use on Stellar Dash upon hitting consecutive times is really useful. The interstellar explosion is going to give you like repetitive explosions in the same area when you use this skill specialization, and that is essentially like that's the build. The extra distance on precision dash, again, it has nothing to do with damage. It just has something to do with like open world when I'm trying to engage. But you could essentially remove precision dash, Da Vinci's courage for more damage if you want to put more damage. Um, if you want to put more damage on maybe Star Destroyer. All right. That is my skill build. Those are my passives. Oh, let me show you my mastery, because I'm gonna get asked about this. This is my current mastery where it stands. However, if you want my full mastery, I'm gonna map it out at least to 90. I know people are way higher than 90. So I'm just tell you that I would go for critical equilibrium first, and then second, um, because I'm PvP here, I would likely go for um, blade harvest. Um, yeah, for PvP. And then for my orb, I am 100% just gonna go for light of annihilation. Using an orb increases critical damage, and that's just so clutch. And then secondary, I would go for breath of infinity because the shield effect is going to heal you. So now I'm stacking shield healing. It's kind of insane. However, for overall damage in PvE, I would likely want to go for a 70/70 Wisdom Perception build because the heavy attack damage increase to Satellite is kind of clutch. So for PvE only, I'll go for these top two rows, but for PvP, I'll 100% get the healing on the orb. Yeah, that's what I would go for like 130, but I'll probably at least add, like I said, 90 into the Questlog in the description. Um, yeah, it's my mastery. Those are my skills. You saw the gear. All right, let me go over some basic combos. Basic combo number one: you're gonna buff with amplification veil, Da Vinci's courage. You're gonna go in with precision dash, frost cleaving, guillotine, death blow. That's your main DPS combo. That's the combo you're gonna be using off cooldown. Looks something like that. As you see, 33k heavy attacks, like massive damage doing this combo. using Amplification Veil. And then outside of that main combo, your other combo using your orb skills is going to be Amplification Veil, Star Calling, Stellar Dash, and then you can Void Slash into Interstellar Explosion. If you're fighting a moving like opponent and you want to time the Interstellar Explosion to like at least when they're not gonna move for at least like 2 seconds, because it takes like 1.5 seconds for it to explode. And then we have Star Destroyer and Supernova Collapse. These are filler skills. Supernova Collapse is extremely good to use after you've already utilized your Stellar Dash and your Void Slash, because they're going to get a recast on both of these skills when used on enough Star Calling and you get consecutive hits. And then you could, like, Interstellar Explosion is going to explode your orbs, so you essentially want to combo into Interstellar and make sure you're comboing with Orb Star Calling into Supernova. Alright, so it's going to look something like this. You got to make sure you get the recast on your Stellar Dash, and then you could also drop some more Star Callings into Supernova, and then you would Star Destroyer into more Star Calling, Stellar Dash, Star Calling, Void Slash, and then you could finish up with another Interstellar. Now keep in mind, like I said, these skills do really good damage. However, they just don't take priority over your main combo and Amplification Veil into Frost Cleaving for the attack speed bonus, Guillotine, Death Blow. That is your main DPS combo. And that is how I was able to do rank 1 with ease. There aren't that many people playing this class yet, so we'll have to see if it gets more competitive. However, I've had a lot of fun playing this build in PvE, and I'm sure that you guys will like it. If this build helps you out, or this video helps you out, please drop a sub, drop a like. Thanks so much for watching. Peace and love, guys.